Awesome lead-in. Thank you. So my name is Susanna, and I'm super excited to be here today, and looking forward to also hearing your thoughts and kind of your examples of how you're all using social media. So just a brief background. I've been at Mayo Clinic in Arizona. So we've got 3 sites in Rochester, Minnesota, Jacksonville, Florida, and Phoenix, Scottsdale. So I am from the sunny part of Mayo Clinic. And prior to working with the Center for Social Media, I worked for 10 years as a medical interpreter, mostly Spanish with a smattering of French, and also worked as an international patient advocate and liaison. So that was great experience as far as working with patients and physicians, and then kind of taking that knowledge and applying it to the virtual world in social media. So this is a photo. Does anybody know what that is?
Sandstorm in Phoenix.
Correct. And does anybody know the proper weather term?
Cool.
Yay, haboob. Yes, that's it. So before moving to Arizona, I'd never heard of the word haboob. I was like, what is that? And I lived in Arizona for a good 6 years before experiencing one. And I would use this slide 3 years ago to kind of say this is a little metaphor for the social media revolution in healthcare. So 3 years ago, when I would speak to sometimes a reluctant audience, I would say the social media revolution is like a haboob. So it kind of started out of nowhere, it kind of crept up. It's expansive, it covers a ton of area, and it is inevitable. So here we are 3 years later, and I think, Ed, you talked about still there's some barriers for healthcare organizations. But 3 years later, we have made some advancements, and we just have a ton of different platforms. They're popping up left and right. And before, for Mayo Clinic, before Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn were even like a glimmer in our eyes, we had our very first social networkers. So this is a photo of our founders, Will and Charlie Mayo, and I like to consider them that they were our first social networkers. So back in the day, they did not stay in an insulated environment. So what they did is they actually traveled throughout the US, traveled abroad, they shared information, they learned from other physicians, and they took that information to improve patient care. So we have long-standing history of reaching out to our consumers and to our stakeholders. So fast forward 150 years or so, and Lee Acey, who's the director for the Mayo Clinic Center for Social Media, created an actual center. So prior to that, we had been dabbling in social media, but it wasn't necessarily recognized by the organization. It wasn't a priority of our leaders. So what Lee did is, working along with the team, created the center. And just wanted to highlight a couple of our priorities for the center. So the first is individuals have the right and responsibility to advocate for their own health. And one key component of our center is that we're also reaching out to others to educate them and to train them about using social media. And we intend to lead the healthcare community in applying these revolutionary tools to spread knowledge. So basically, in a nutshell, we ultimately want to empower the patient and educate our community to really improve patient quality everywhere. And I think that this philosophy is probably super similar to what you are all doing in your community and alliances. So this is just a slide to show the natural progression of how Mayo Clinic started in social media. So back in 2005, we started producing podcasts, and over the last 8 years now, we have several different social media platforms that we're actively using. The most recent being Google+, and just out of curiosity, how many people are using Google+? Sort of, yeah. Okay, so that was kind of our impression when we first started and decided to create an account, but actually it's taken off, surprisingly enough, for all the skeptics and my team that we thought this will never catch on. But it's really taken off, and we found that it is a great means of putting our content out there and having it appear on Google searches. So it's actually turned out to be, and I think this is one of those things that eventually it's going to catch on and it'll become more mainstream. And I know that Mike and I were talking that, way back when, Twitter wasn't such a mainstream form of social media. And now with traditional media and the news using it, people are more familiar with it. I think that's going to happen with Google+. So as you're sitting here, you're probably thinking, like, what should we be doing? What direction should we be pursuing? And I kind of did look on the site, Aligning Forces for Quality site. And within the 16 community and alliances, it looks like they all have a social media presence, at least a Facebook and a Twitter account. But in doing that, with all the different platforms out there, you really have to think strategically, and maybe because everybody else uses Twitter or Facebook, does that necessarily mean that you need to use it as well? So, of course, we have to think about who's our audience, our stakeholders, who is it that we're trying to reach? And I would assume that beyond patients, you're probably also looking at community leaders, and there's probably a whole host of people. So you kind of have to think what platforms out there are going to touch upon and reach all those different individuals. And here I put what problems do you need to solve, but actually it should be what problems does your community need to solve. So you're really out there to provide those solutions and answers. And another way of looking at it, is there a process that you need to improve? And ultimately, what message would you like to deliver? And how can you add value, both to people within your organization and to your stakeholders? So at Mayo Clinic, it's super easy for us. Our mission is the needs of the patient come first. So that's basically what directs all our strategic priorities, is that. And to put this like a little framework, just so like 3 key things to take away are the 3 E's. And the 3 E's are not about one-way communication. It's all about 2-way communication, and what better way to start than by engaging your consumers, patients, and stakeholders. So this is a screenshot. The 3rd day that I started with the center, getting familiarized with the different platforms, and I stumbled across, in fact, I was in Rochester in training, so I was like super excited when I saw this, stumbled across a post from the daughter of a patient who was end-stage renal disease, and nobody in her family was a match. So they had said, it's very grim. The outcome for your mother, unfortunately, is very grim. So the daughter, who was in marketing and was dabbling in social media, thought, what the heck? I'm going to post this on social media and see what happens. And lo and behold, she found a donor for her mother on Twitter, which is incredible. So Amy Donahue was the woman who responded to a tweet at like 9 p.m. at night. They connected. Mayo Clinic then did the evaluation to see if she was a match. Thankfully, she was a match. They had the surgery. I've been there since 2010, so it's been about 3 years. So had the surgery. Everything is going fantastic. From that, we created, we have a blog, Sharing Mayo Clinic, where patients and volunteers and staff share their stories. So we created a blog post and shared their story with the world, which was then picked up by the Today Show. And they did an amazing story on Amy Donahue and the patient. And that was really heartwarming. And then the story continues. That Amy then is now producing a short film on, and she's traveled throughout the US and Canada, connecting with every person that she's connected with on Facebook and helped to find kidney for their family member. So it's kind of gone full circle. So the 2nd E is empower. And this slide, has anybody heard of SCAD? So, probably mine. Okay. So SCAD is a very rare disease. It's spontaneous coronary artery dissection. And this is a story of a woman, Catherine Leon, who shortly after giving birth suffered SCAD, which is life-threatening, and you can die from this. She went to the emergency room, she was treated, she was told she had this diagnosis. She was told, I'm sorry you have this, but we don't know much else. So what did she do? She went home, and what do most people do when they get a diagnosis or think they have something? They go to the internet. So she went to the internet, didn't even know where to start, came across a online virtual support group through womensheart.org, and created a group of women who'd had her exact diagnosis, and it's a very, like I said, very rare disease. So she brought these women together, and after she had a group of them, she went to a medical conference, found one of our Mayo cardiologists, and said, hey, there's very little research on SCAD. I have collected kind of a group of women through my virtual community. Would you consider doing a research study or a registry of patients? So Dr. Hayes jumped on that opportunity, spoke to Mayo Clinic and our research department. They were able to get IRB approval on this and decided to set up a registry with the initial goal of recruiting 12 patients. So Catherine Leon went back to the support group. Within a week, she had 18 participants. They were able to complete the study, and the pilot was a success, and now it's been published in Mayo Clinic Proceedings. Wall Street Journal wrote a story, and now 2 additional studies have come up from that, and they are looking to recruit 200 participants. So this is really an awesome example of patient-driven care and how a patient was empowered to go to Mayo Clinic. I mean, in years past, how could you possibly approach a physician to do a research on your particular diagnosis? So I think this is a really powerful story of how networking helped her. So we then decided to create, and Ed, you've mentioned the support groups, to create a Facebook page for SCAD. And we then also created a YouTube video that highlighted all of this, so we were able to kind of take this one story and distribute it through all our social media platforms. And this is a screenshot speaking about connecting virtual connections. Mayo Clinic has a Connect site. We now have, I think, close to 50,000 Mayo and non-Mayo patients. It's purely patient-driven. We do monitor and we do flag comments, or comments that are flagged as inappropriate. We do go in and remove those, but it's really a place for patients to connect. And we do also provide content for YouTube videos and our web, but mostly it's just a place for them to share their ideas, thoughts, and questions. And then finally, of course, educate. This is a photo of, or I should say, screenshot of Dr. Ruben Mesa, who's one of our hematologist oncologists that works with blood cancers. So he is dedicated and passionate about sharing the latest advances, treatments, updates on myelofibrosis, and a whole host of other blood cancers. So he was kind of our revolutionary MD, so to speak, in wanting to share this information. So rather than just keeping it in the journals, he is putting it out there for patients and family members who are seeking information on that. And he had sent me, I had kind of asked him for, you know, we get all the time, well, what's the ROI? How do you measure this? What are the analytics? And, you know, there are different platforms that you can use to measure sentiment. But this is anecdotal, but yet I think it's very powerful because it comes straight from Dr. Lisa. He said, the videos have been helpful to bring in some patients who would not have come or known about us otherwise, and have been useful for patients who came for the other reasons above. So I often get that question from physicians, you know, what's the bottom line? Well, he actually has patients from New Zealand, from all over the world, that have come to see him because they happen to see his videos. And then if we have time later, or if back in the hotel room, or if you're bored at any point, we did produce, along with, you know, the 3 E's, engage, empower, and educate. You also have like the little e, which I call entertain. So within all of that, you really want to capture the interest of your consumers, stakeholders, patients. So we created, and I can't sing it all, otherwise I do it. But
Oh,
it's,
go ahead.
No, that's okay. But it's blood pressure, lipids, and BMI that goes, it's a parody of the Tommy Two-Tone, 1980s, 8675. Okay. So anyway.
So that's always in your head all day.
Right, right.
Well-
So actually, we just wanted to raise awareness, and this actually was driven by Dr. Hayes, who was a cardiologist working with the SCAD patients. And it was just kind of a fun video. And yes, that blood pressure, lipids, and BMI might get permanently engraved in your brain. So we're taking an unlikely trio, the 3 E's and the little e, entertain. You have to have a little bit of heart and passion when you do all of this. So if you mix the 3 E's, some inspiration, some passion, take a look at your strategic priorities, you will have a successful social media outreach campaign.